Hello there, sweet listener. I'm so glad you're here with me. Whether you're resting after a long day, curled up with your favorite tea, or just looking for a soft place to land, this story is for you. It's about one of those years that felt like the worst, until it gently, unexpectedly became one of the best. Let's go back to a small town tucked between gentle hills and golden fields, where the breeze always smelled like something blooming and time moved just a little slower. That's where I lived the year. Everything seemed to fall apart and come together again. The year began on a rainy morning. Not a dramatic thunderstorm, just a steady, soft drizzle tapping against the windows of my little cottage at the edge of town. My cat, Pickle, was curled in a tight ball by the fire, and I sat at the kitchen table staring at a list of resolutions I didn't feel ready to write. You see, I had just lost my job at the old bookshop downtown. The shop had closed quietly right before the holidays, and with it went the place I'd spent nearly every day for the past 5 years. The shelves, the smell of paper and old wood, the kind regulars who'd tell me their life stories while buying poetry books, it was all gone. And worse, I felt stuck. Like winter had settled inside me, not just outside. But life, as it does, had other plans. A few days into the new year, my neighbor Mrs. Linden knocked on my door with a plate of cinnamon scones and a nervous smile. Her voice trembled just a little when she asked, "Would you be able to help me in the garden this spring? My knees aren't what they used to be." I almost said no. But something about her, maybe, the hopeful way she held out that plate of warm scones made me say yes. The next morning, I found myself in her backyard, standing among flower beds still sleeping under frosty soil. "We'll wake them up together," she said. "Just like people. Everyone needs waking up sometimes." Each week, I came back. We pruned rose bushes, planted marigold seeds, and drank chamomile tea under the apple tree. The garden slowly came to life, and so did I. Then there was the unexpected invitation from the town library, asking if I'd like to host a weekly story circle. Just for fun, just for whoever wanted to listen. At first, I felt too small for the idea, but the thought of reading stories aloud, of filling a room with laughter and warmth and words again, it tugged at something inside me. So, I said yes. The first session had just 2 people. One was Mrs. Linden. The other was a little boy named Theo, who insisted on wearing a wizard hat. By spring, the room was full. Looking back now, I realized the year didn't change all at once. It wasn't like flipping a light switch. It was slow, gentle, like rain softening the earth until flowers could bloom again. It was still the year I lost something, but it was also the year I started finding myself in new places, in soil-covered hands, in shared stories, in tiny moments of courage. By the time the last frost melted from the garden, my hands had learned the shape of a trowel and the rhythm of pulling weeds while listening to the bees. Mrs. Linden and I spent quiet mornings there together, her in her big straw hat and me with dirt under my fingernails. The first flowers to bloom were the violets, tiny, cheerful bursts of purple that peeked between the rocks as if shyly asking, "Is it safe to come out now?" I knew exactly how they felt. The story circle at the library grew every week. What started as a quiet reading session turned into something magical. People began bringing homemade snacks, little hand-drawn bookmarks, and even their own stories. We sat on beanbags, cushions, and picnic rugs spread across the children's corner. It didn't matter how old you were, trees made everyone the same size. One Thursday, a girl named Molly, only 9 years old, stood up and read her own poem. She stuttered at first, but the room held its breath for her. She read about her dog, who had passed away, and the way his tail would knock over everything on the coffee table. It was simple and full of love. When she finished, there were soft claps and watery smiles. I remember thinking, this is why I was meant to lose the bookshop, to find this instead. The summer came slowly, like honey poured from a jar. I filled my days with things that fed my soul. I baked blueberry muffins for Mrs. Linden and helped her repaint the garden fence. I walked the long way home through the woods behind the park, stopping to watch fireflies dance among the tall grass. Pickle, my cat, became a regular visitor at the library, curled beside me as I read, purring so loudly it made the kids giggle. Someone even painted a sign for the front desk. Story circle with pickle friends, Thursdays at 4. One afternoon, while sitting under the blooming apple tree in Mrs. Linden's yard, she turned to me and said, "You know, I think you've grown." I smiled. "In what way?" She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "In the way that people do when they stop waiting for life to begin and start living it right in the middle of everything." I didn't have the words to reply, so I just nodded. But she was right. That summer, I wasn't who I used to be. I was quieter, softer, but somehow stronger too. I no longer felt like I'd been pushed off course. Instead, it felt like I'd been planted in a new patch of earth and I was learning how to bloom. The leaves started to change in early October. In Willowfield, autumn arrives gently. The wind carries the scent of apples and wood smoke, and the trees dress themselves in the softest shades of orange, gold, and crimson. The garden in Mrs. Linden's backyard had turned from bloom to bounty. Plump pumpkins rested under wide leaves, and the raspberry bushes gave their last sweet offerings. By now, I had a rhythm. Mornings in the garden, afternoons at the library, evenings with Pickle curled on my lap, purring while I read old favorites aloud just for us. One afternoon, as I hung a tiny chalkboard sign outside the library that read, "Story Circle tonight," a woman stopped beside me. "You're the one who reads the stories, right?" she asked. I nodded, brushing chalk dust from my fingertips. "My daughter's been coming," she said with a smile. "She talks about it all week, says it makes her feel brave." That night, when I sat cross-legged among the cushions, I noticed Molly the girl, who'd once trembled through her poem now, confidently reading aloud a funny story she had written about a squirrel who wanted to be mayor. Everyone laughed and clapped, and I felt something soft and powerful settle into my chest. A quiet kind of joy. The kind that doesn't shout, but hums, warm and steady, like a song only your heart can hear. Back at home, I began writing again, not for work or pressure, but just because I wanted to. I filled page after page with memories, dreams, and tiny details I never wanted to forget. The smell of cinnamon in Mrs. Linden's kitchen, the way the apple tree whispered when the wind passed through it, the sound of children laughing as they turned pages. On the last Thursday of the year, we held a special winter story circle. The library glowed with paper lanterns, and everyone wore fuzzy socks and sipped cocoa. Pickle wore a scarf someone had knit just for him. When it was my turn to read, I didn't pick a book. Instead, I told the story of this year, how I had started it in loss and doubt, how I had been gently held by gardens, stories, neighbors, and new friends, how the worst year of my life had slowly, sweetly, become the best. After I finished, there was a pause. Then someone clapped, and then everyone did. Mrs. Linden winked at me from the back row, and I thought, maybe the hardest years are like winter soil. They look empty, but underneath, something is waiting, something is growing, something good. Thank you truly for spending this story time with me. If you found comfort here, if even one sentence made you smile, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, and come back for more cozy tales like this one. Until next time, take care of your heart. And remember, even your hardest seasons can grow something beautiful.